here to talk about path from Web2 to Web3 gaming. So this is a big theme for the entire summit. So I've been trying to think of fresh things to talk about so we don't end up repeating the same points again and again. But this is an incredibly illustrious panel. And so I want to start off, obviously, by asking everyone to go ahead and introduce yourselves, even though most people here already know you. And then we'll dive into some questions. Sebastien, maybe you want to start?
Sure. Hello, everyone. For those of you who didn't see me yesterday, I'm the CEO and co-founder of the Sandbox, which is a decentralized virtual world where anyone can become a creator, start using their assets with our no-code game maker, share it on a virtual map, and open their experience toward many other users, monetize it as well the way they want. I'm also the president of the Blockchain Game Alliance, which is an organization that now counts over 600 members.
I'm Calvin, co-founder of Shrapnel. Shrapnel is a UGC-driven extraction FPS built on Unreal 5. The UGC component is we give players the ability to create skins, characters, and maps and own them as NFTs. You can also create prefabs and map objects if creating maps are too intimidating, and place them on a shared marketplace for other creators to pull and license in their own maps. We also have a backend that's kind of an all-in-one platform with a messaging layer architecture that's infrastructure agnostic that helps Shrapnel integrate with Web3 features, but we're willing to open that up to other game developers in the future as well. It's called GameBridge.
Cool. Thanks, Calvin. All right.
Hi, I'm Ezgi. I'm the product lead of MetaMask SDK. MetaMask SDK provides connection between any dApp and MetaMask mobile app seamlessly and securely.
Very cool. All of you guys come from a gaming background, and so you took the path from Web2 to Web3, probably a lot earlier than other people. But when you came over, I think oftentimes when we think about, what are the products that we want to build, we think about our own experiences. So how did you guys make the transition? And for anyone who is currently with a Web2 game and looking to get into Web3, what is maybe one key piece of technical advice you would give them?
I did the transition from ad tech. I used to work with mobile games and anything related to ads, ad mediations, ad networks, ad SDKs. So I'm very familiar with casual, hyper-casual games, making money from ads, and how it works, how the industry is, and I guess before I changed paths, I realized that there are a few things that affected that industry that made it extremely saturated, extremely difficult to be more successful, to have a profitable mobile game. One of them is the privacy change of iOS. After iOS 14, and the other one is that extreme amount of mobile gaming companies building the same games over and over again with different colors, slightly different colors, and graphics. So I realized the market is saturated, and the mobile game developers are stuck with choosing in-app purchases type of models and giving 30% to the app stores, or trying to make money from ads, but the entry point gets higher and higher. Now, without spending millions of dollars per month, you can't actually acquire enough users to be profitable from ads. So I decided that there should be a third way of doing things, and that's where Web3 came into the picture.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. And I do want to hear about your Unity integration later. Calvin, please.
Sure. So in 2016, 2017, I was traveling in Thailand, and a bunch of kids in Chiang Mai were showing me this shitcoin called Ethereum. I had my suspicions coming from a Wall Street background, but curiosity. I'm definitely a curious person, so I decided to go down pretty deep into the tech rabbit hole and read the white papers and study consensus algorithms, and really understood. It kind of dawned on me that Web3 is the next iteration of the cloud, where cloud is distributed compute and storage, whereas Web3 is both distributed and decentralized compute and storage, where anyone can contribute their compute and resources in a Byzantine fault-tolerant network, and so it was a really interesting just eye-opening moment for me, where it's not that complicated. It's just another type of database. We've always used it. Arguably, I mean, the first commercial use case of it was, on airplanes, but of distributed computing. But I guess the first consumer mass adoption was BitTorrent and Napster and all those networks. But we never really called that Web3 or blockchain. In my view, it's just applications, the front end, and the back end is whether you want it on the cloud or on a more decentralized database.
Amazing. Sebastien?
Well, some piece of advice to developer who want to jump Web2 to Web3. Before the technical side, I will just jump what's your motive? Why are you doing it? One of the right reason is you cannot stand anymore the existing business model of free-to-play advertising, etc. So trying to define a new business model, that's a valid one. I think also really motivated toward shifting the power and co-creating with a community of players. So involving the players within the creative process, designing the experience and allowing them to actually influence the economy of your game. That's and that allows to define new form of experience and experiments. We've seen that with Play to Earn, Axie Infinity, and we're already starting new wave of that this year. On the technological side, I think don't lose yourself too much into the technical details of the blockchain, which layer, which protocol, which solution, which transaction speeds up, but look more at ecosystems. Which blockchain has the most complete ecosystem that will alleviate you from the work of having to rebuild every piece of the puzzle. So you don't need to build a marketplace yourself for the content discovery. You need to build yourself the DEX and the centralized exchange for bringing the liquidity and the tokens and other solutions that are so important and makes in Web3 this network effect I was mentioning about, where you're not the only one trying to drive your users and solve the technical problem, but it's the whole ecosystem that benefits from having the right solution in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let me stay on that point for a second, then we'll come back this way to talk specifically about product. So the way that product curation works in a lot of ecosystems is you go to the foundation. And the foundation is the one who sort of blesses the best solutions for that particular ecosystem. When you're talking to developers and they're figuring out, okay, how do I piece together everything from the chain all the way up to the application level? How do you advise them to basically do their own search for the best products? Do you tell them just trust what the foundation says, or what advice do you give to them there?
Having a background in gaming, somehow, and I started in peer-to-peer. My first company was co-founded back in 2008, was a peer-to-peer application. It's always you cannot evolve in an industry if you're not deeply involved yourself as a user into it. If you don't understand what's the user experience of going through using the technology, setting up, servers, setting up your wallet, setting up various things. So if you haven't bought an NFT yourself first, and a bunch of NFTs, if you didn't go through the wallet setup, the marketplace, and so on, it's already going to be hard to just trust what someone else is telling you without deeply testing things.
100%, yeah.
Also, I think it's important to make sure that the interest of the platform, the network, are really aligned with yours. Are they going to be live when I want to go live? Do they have the marketing support? I am an important actor for them, or I'm just one into 1,000 others? And that will actually help you also figure out which are the right solution, which are the right audience, and which are the right technological components that contribute to building up and making your decisions.
Yeah. No, absolutely fair. So, Calvin, since I do think you mentioned the word game bridge in your opening, right? So we can talk about it. Okay. So for any Web2 dev who all they know is, okay, digital ownership of your individual assets is very important. I want to add that into my game, make it a Web3 game. I know the chain and I know Unity. What am I missing?
I guess I can start with, what GameBridge is trying to solve, which is the whole premise of this of this panel.
Yeah.
Is I think a lot of people have built this beautiful island called Web3 land, but haven't given people a bridge to get there. And we saw the same problem pre-cloud, when companies were building on-premise their entire architecture, and then a beautiful island called the cloud came, but people, Microsoft didn't give folks a clean way to get there to the cloud. It was either take the cloud or leave it, right? Or didn't meet developers where they wanted to be met. But AWS ended up doing that and giving people a very easy, accessible way to get to the cloud. You can do hybrid cloud. We'll meet you where you want to be met. You don't have to change your protocols or anything like that. And that was a way to get people onboarded into the cloud, and obviously they won the cloud wars early on. And we see the same thing with GameBridge, and the problem in industry today is a lot of people are saying, here's this promised land called Web3. We don't know how to get there, but good luck, and I'll see you on the other side, right? It's never going to work that way, and GameBridge is here to solve it by giving people a really developers an extremely easy onboarding experience, basically low code, no code, drag and drop, and more importantly, giving them modularity and options on the back end of choosing whatever infrastructure they want. So you don't have to be tied down to a particular chain or particular database or storage. If you want Web2 storage, go for that. If you want IPFS, go for that. We could integrate with different databases, as well as different chains and public chains, private chains, app chains, whatever. And so it really helps the developer abstract away the complexities, integrate all these Web3 features while maintaining a flexible, future-proof backend. So it's a bit more than just a gaming SDK, because a gaming SDK is quite static. You're locked into that particular solution. And if something changes in the future, you can't be flexible with your architecture. Whereas we're built on the messaging layer architecture, where events get piped to the particular infrastructure of choice on your back end, so you can have a more future-proof design.
Yeah. Very cool. And the way that you guys are developing GameBridge is, most importantly, Shrapnel, the game, is using the components of GameBridge. And so can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, we practice what we preach, right?
Yeah.
So we stress tested our platform with a AAA game and turned the dial all the way up to 11 with all these advanced scenarios like composable NFTs, dynamic NFTs, evolvable ones, burnable ones. There's probably 20 or 30 scenarios out there, even down to KYC, down to something called constructive receipt, where let's say you're winning and losing things of value all the time. Those are taxable events. You probably don't want to give your mom a heart attack every time you play a NFT game. So there's a way to accrue that in the background. When you're ready to finally settle, then we can settle on chain, and you can take the tax hit when you're ready to sell or buy. Things like that. We've covered all these advanced scenarios for ourselves, and happy to open that up for other game developers looking to go into Web3.
Fantastic. All right. So I don't know a person in Web3 who doesn't have a MetaMask wallet. So for you guys, when Consensys was looking at a partnership with Unity, what were some of your key objectives? And then now that the partnership has been announced and the integration is on its way, what do MetaMask users have to look forward to?
So when we decide to build the MetaMask SDK to provide connection, it's just a base idea of what we want to deliver as a whole. We we want to be able to access games, and we didn't want games to like create separate marketplaces just because there's no developer tool to connect to your wallet or to do blockchain transactions without giving up on some infrastructural decisions. So what we did is like we worked together with the Unity team, build the MetaMask SDK, which provides connection with MetaMask mobile app from any desktop game, web game, mobile game, anything that is built on Unity engine. And developers can directly access to the network as well. So it's not just accessing the wallet, but it's like accessing whatever they want to access for that user. They can still use the MetaMask SDK. If they want to do contract interactions, they can still use MetaMask SDK for all these actions. But this is just the base. So what we want is to deliver every developer product that we are building for dApps via MetaMask SDK. So since we support Unity, JavaScript, iOS, and at the end of this month, we're going to release Android SDK, and that we partnered with Google, actually.
Yeah.
They helped us a lot with different aspects of Android and using different features of Android. But we're going to use this SDK as a base to deliver different developer products. If we want to support multi-chain, that's going to be available via SDK. If you want to support anything else, that's going to be available via SDK. So it's the entry point for developers to access any types of MetaMask developer products.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So this is a tool suite that developers, doesn't matter like where you develop, that developers need to successfully build a really solid Web3 game, if we're thinking of the Web3 game as a technology product. So
I actually forgot to mention that we are available in the Unity Asset Store as a verified solution. So any developer that use Unity Asset Store to access different types of tools for developing their games on Unity Engine, they can access MetaMask SDK. And we are actually planning to we are working on new things that we are going to release via Unity soon.
Yeah, fantastic. So is there a tool that you would like to have as a Web3 game developer that either currently does not exist or two, you don't even hear anybody working on it? Can you think of anything that, I mean, there's a new startup every day that's working on Web3 gaming infra, so that's a tough question. But if you had a wish list of things that, I really wish that somebody would develop this, and then I know that it would be this much easier for developers, what would that be, if anything? Or is everyone working on something already? It's just a matter of time.
I think everyone's working on something already.
Yeah.
But the question is whether they can deliver what they promise or not. Mm-hmm. I can't think of anything specific other than all the usual stuff like making onboarding easier, making learning curve more accessible, making Web3 world more accessible, not just by crypto native users, but for users that don't know anything about NFTs or tokens.
I think the industry is quite fragmented. Everyone's working on their own little solutions. Like here's, if you want to build a Web3 application, you have to talk to 50 different vendors and kind of piece together all these solutions yourself on the back end, and maybe some of them go bankrupt and stop supporting you. So I think that's a big problem in the industry, that we need orchestration. And I just don't see too many folks building orchestration layers for the industry. Folks are too stuck on the lean startup approach, which is, let me create a API to fix a problem, and if I get some revenue from that, I can bootstrap and create another API to fix another problem. But you're never going to fix all problems today and all problems in the future. What you need is, in my opinion, is a orchestration layer that can fix the set of all problems now and in the future. And here, that's exactly what we're building.
So quite interestingly, I tend to think the same, but that's not a problem. It's actually an opportunity. Right? Just like in Web2 and in mobile gaming, you've had before tools like PlayFab, Xsolar, which
Yeah.
have been very, or even from different solutions that provide like a whole suite to manage your economy, your content management system, tracking, analytics. Unity has also tried to build that, and it's become very centralized. All your data is there, so it become a single point of failure, and also like maybe the speed at which things evolve and innovate gets slowed down. Versus, and in Web3 we have Stardust, we have a few other companies. You're building one solution as well, so there's already choice available.
Yeah.
But not every piece of like the problem. Like if I start to think, hey, I want a solution for not only managing tokens, minting tokens, so the pre-mint, the post-mint, like how do you manage utilities and connection of utilities of those NFT? How do you manage like analytics and then cohorting segments and audiences and plug that with your email marketing tool, your Braze, your CRM and other side. And thankfully, there's different actors. Some are emerging to become bigger and more trustable, whether Elica, Absolute Labs, Stardust, as I was mentioning,
Yeah.
Crew3, Tropy, those are things that are different, and either you piece them all together and then you work with different vendors, or you work with one and you put all your trust in a centralized actor almost again. And
Yeah.
you have the choice.
Yeah.
That's what's important.
Yeah. It's very interesting to sort of, get different perspectives on this question. You would think that in this industry, because we've been working on this problem for a long time, that there would really be one voice, that it needs to be easier for the developer, it needs to be easier for the gamer. And I absolutely think that's true. But I have to say, so the last time I was up here, I did a fireside chat with Rolf Reichert, who's chair of ESL Gaming. And he said something that, he kind of just flipped it, which is kind of the most obvious way to be counterintuitive. But he flipped it, and there's a lot of truth to it. He said, gamers will jump through hoops for a really great game. So that's not to say that, if you're a casual gamer, that you're going to all of a sudden, open up your terminal and get into a game and, the game is that great that you're willing to learn how to do all of that. That's not what he's saying. But rather that these UI UX problems that we really, really spend most of our time on in Web3 gaming infra, they exist and they're important. But if you have a great game, they don't need to be perfect in order for your gamers to really flood into the game en masse. So I know that there was a panel devoted to this question earlier today, but I'm going to ask all of you because you have great knowledge on this. What makes a Web3 game in particular? What, if you can think of a unique characteristic of a Web3 game, other than the fact that there are tradable in-game assets, what would that be? Is there a design principle for a Web3 game designer where you're like, okay, like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe I can jump in. So
Yeah.
let's move aside the fun, the gameplay side, because that's not part of the Web3 part.
Yeah.
It's really the well-designed circular economy, which takes into account not just one or two actors, but create multiple roles, who wants to exchange multiple resources, and
That's a good
has
one.
an
Yeah.
external influx of money. So it's not a zero-sum game like we've seen before, and we know that will not survive long.
Yeah. It's a great one. Yeah.
So Web3 blockchains, in my view, are just more fault-tolerant networks. And so with fault tolerance, higher fault tolerance comes more data persistence. And so when you're playing a Web3 game or using a Web3 application, you assuming the technology all bodes out well, you can have the peace of mind that your data is more persistent in the Web3 world than in the Web2 world. And while that may not mean a lot to you now, it will mean a lot to you when there's a big problem. Let's say your account gets banned, or someone decides to take away your item, or like you can't get your money out of a country or something like that. It's something that we take for granted, data persistence. In the Web2 world, we just assume our data is always there, but it really hits you personally if something happens that destroys that entire worldview. So Web3 hopes to change that with a lot more data persistence.
I'm going to give a similar answer related to data. A good game, mid-core, hardcore game, a traditional one, uses a lot of data-driven decisions for the game design, for new features, for understanding their players, for identifying like what player wants, what player don't want. I see a lack of data-driven decision-making in game design and game mechanics with Web3 games. And I think a good Web3 game would be the ones that follow a similar approach and understand their users for new, better features for a better game design.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's one of the things where, you know, for all of us who are quite creative, which is pretty much everybody in this room, you think to yourself that design is all about just, you know, sitting in a room and then coming up with something beautiful. But the truth of the matter is that most of the time, especially for commercial product, the design is informed by the business model. And it's informed by the quality of the infrastructure that you have. That really, I mean, limits or defines the limits of what your design choices are for a particular game or any kind of intellectual property. No, but these are all great examples. So we're all bullish on Web3 here. That's why we're in the industry. But how do you see it shaking out ultimately? Some people who are super bullish say, you know, every Web2 game will have some sort of Web3 component to it. Other people say, you know, it'll remain a niche industry in terms of gaming, that Web3 will be a small part of a much, much bigger space. Along that very, very wide spectrum, how do you guys see things shaking out?
Well, I'm very bullish in the space, obviously, but I think like the thing that within 10 years, like true digital ownership will be broadly accepted.
Yeah.
And so it will be the norm to own digital assets and be able to move them out of game.
Yeah.
And it will feel very abnormal, actually, that it's not possible. Like, how can we live in the dinosaur age of technology where like things we bought, virtual items we bought didn't really belong to us, and I couldn't send them to my friend, use them in other places, and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, assuming the technology works out, like I said before, I view it as the next evolution of the cloud. So, I see mass adoption for version 2 of the cloud, but obviously there will still be people using version 1 of the cloud as well. I don't think it's going to be a binary all or nothing move.
Yeah, and I mean, so we've been in the crypto industry a long time, and I remember the first time I started to try to sell blockchains. Basically, there were some very traditional enterprises we talked to said we're still on Cobalt. I didn't know what that was, right? Now y'all are laughing and smiling because Cobalt is what, from the 70s or 80s or like something like that. Also tells you the flavor of organizations we were selling to. But Ezgi, please.
I also project something that is hybrid for a while that promotes the transition between Web 2 to Web 3. I don't think game companies suddenly stop all their traditional monetization models and move to something brand new, but I think they're gonna start slowly add more and more into their existing models, and then test out which one works best for them. And for specifically mobile, I believe Android App Store policy change that will allow NFT and token transactions will be a good start for that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely a lot of regulatory issues need to shake out before we really make the move. What's up?
Just jumping in. We gotta keep them on moving. We got
are we backed up? Oh, okay.
You guys are vibing so much. You just
okay. Over. Sorry about that, guys. Well, please help me thank this fabulous panel. Sebastien, Calvin, Ezgi. Really wonderful to hear from you guys this afternoon. So yeah, Bryson's telling us to jet, so I guess we got.
I'm sorry. I hate to play spoiler.
No worries. Thanks, everyone.